I've come to speak at the invitation of ISOC to an audience about DKIM and related technologies, why they're important to, for uptake, what they provide, and basically the future of email authentication technology. The masterclass this morning consisted of about a dozen people, all of whom are somewhat familiar with DKIM and DMARC, but we're interested in hearing the history of it, and I spoke about both of those at length, especially with DKIM. And there was some great discussion afterwards. They know that DMARC is coming. They're interested in hearing more about that and what's coming. We are at a place where phishing and spam have become very expensive problems. Phishing in particular costs millions of dollars a year in fraud claims and insurance issues. And we need to come up with some solutions to these problems that are inexpensive and don't impact the users unnecessarily. Nice, clean solutions. And we have some ideas. We're making some progress. There's been some adoption, but we need to keep the message out there that we need to keep strong on this and keep moving forward and keep talking about the problems and keep experimenting with new solutions. One of the things that we never really had with email is proof of who sent the message, or an identity on the message that is not false. Any kind of an identity. I mean, except for what your incoming MTAs know, an entire message could be faked. And so we have some technologies now. People have heard of SPF and DKIM. These technologies give you a domain name or an identity of some kind that there's been some proof around whether it's valid or how it's actually involved in the delivery of a message. And that sounds kind of like, oh, of course we have that, but we haven't had that in 30 years of email until recently. And so as that's now gaining really rapid deployment, we're reaching the point where we can start relying on it to be there and do something interesting with that information and possibly do a better job of identifying mail we do want or mail we don't want. DKIM is a crypto signing technology that applies at the domain layer, not at a user layer. It doesn't appear inside the message in a visible way, so it doesn't really damage the user experience very much once it's in use. And it enables us to say this domain name took some responsibility for handling the message. And again, that sounds simple and trivial, but we've never had the capability to say for certain this domain was involved in the delivery of that message, so I can hold them partly responsible for it. Whether that's a good thing for the message or the bad thing for the message is up to you to figure out. Deploying DKIM requires undertaking an audit of your systems. You want to make sure that all mail coming out of your domain passes through a server that's going to sign your mail. You need to make sure that the quality of the messages you're signing is good, because that's going to be your name on it for once it gets out there and verifiers start doing DKIM verification. So there's some auditing involved. There's a little bit of DNS work involved, because that's where DKIM is a cryptographic mechanism. So there's a public key and a private key involved, and the public keys are stored in the DNS. So there's a little bit of DNS work involved, a little bit more DNS load. It's digital signing, so there's some cryptography involved as well, but the load we've found is quite tolerable. And after that, it's a matter of figuring out how you want to deal with verifying as it comes in. So messages that bear signatures bear some special treatment of some kind, and you have to come up with some policies and procedures for handling signed mail when it arrives. Depending on the size of your infrastructure, DKIM can take a little while to roll out. If you have a lot of infrastructure already and a lot of things you need to defend and get in line, it can be a little bit of a project. But the software and tools are already very extensive. I work on an open source product called OpenDKIM, available for free. All the tools in it are free. And being able to give that away means it doesn't take much for you to download that, run through a checklist, and you're up and signing. There are people that are part of this community that have taken that one step further and given you a complete cookbook on download this RPM, install it, run these few commands, and you're up and signing. Or you're up and verifying, or both of those things. So the actual technical work is not that big a deal. It really depends on if you're part of an organization where the DNS guys and the mail guys hate each other, that's something you're going to have to sort out. but the technology piece of it is really not that difficult. DMARC is a new technology that it was initiated by PayPal, Google, and originally PayPal and Google, and then spread to be a consortium of about 16 companies: Microsoft, Yahoo, Fidelity, Bank of America. It's a long list. And they have come up with a proposal that will build on top of DKIM and on SPF to create a technology that can arrange to reject mail that isn't properly protected by one of those two, and provide a reporting mechanism back to the brands that want to protect themselves to say, here is all the mail we saw that claimed to be from you. This part was protected properly, this part was not. You may have a spoofing problem if there's some stuff that wasn't, or you might have a leak in your infrastructure because mail is getting out with your name on it that doesn't have either of these two technologies protecting it. So it is not only a policy layer to try to protect end users, but a feedback layer to give the brand owners visibility into what's happening with their name out there. We've seen that worldwide statistics in terms of large players like Gmail and Hotmail has resulted in an estimated 60% of the world's mailboxes are now protected by DMARC. That adoption curve is very steep. It's very exciting to see. And we are pretty sure it will continue as DMARC now moves into the public space for standardization. I think that standardizing DMARC is an important step because there are always organizations that are hesitant to get involved in a technology that hasn't been through some kind of formal standardization process. They don't want to deploy something experimental. They're concerned they'll spend all this money to get involved in something and they'll be the only ones there in the end. So I think that the standardization effort is necessary, and I'm excited to see that DMARC at least has proceeded to the point where it's ready to start that work. SPF itself is actually currently officially an experimental protocol, even though it's been around longer than all the others, and we're working on moving it towards standardization now as well. And DKIM is already a standard. From what I understand from colleagues from the Netherlands, it's not as far along as it is globally, but the adoption, it's there and it's coming up. They have a couple I've spoken to already that have deployed, many that have deployed DKIM and SPF, and a couple that are now experimenting with DMARC. So I'm pleased with the progress. An important piece of the email authentication puzzle is IPv6. The advent of IPv6 means that as mail transitions into IPv6, we have to leave behind a lot of the protections that exist only in IPv4. And I'm talking about DNSBL's reputation of IPv4 space. Those things are not going to transition nicely into IPv6. So we're left with domain reputation based on DKIM and SPF. So as those transitions occur and as you create transition plans, it is necessary to think about transition into technologies like DKIM, SPF, and DMARC, because they're the only lines of defense we're going to have in the future. I think we're definitely heading for an email ecosystem that has embraced domain authentication and domain reputation. I think that that's pretty much unavoidable. We've held off for a long time, and we see that that's pretty much the road ahead involves that. I still see it as an open system. I still see it as a collaborative system. I think that we have the technologies before us that can solve a lot of the problems, or at least take a good shot at solving all these problems, and make for a cleaner experience for the end user. And as we gain more experience with them, they get easier. The best advice I have is not to ignore it until someone else has made it easy for you. It's better to get involved and at least be familiar with the work, so when your time comes to implement this, you're prepared.